Hello everyone, my name is TaxOwlbear and welcome back to the Lovecraftian video game Retrospective, and welcome to Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth. Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth is probably one of the most well-known Lovecraftian games. It came out in 2006 for Windows and Xbox, but had been in development since at least 2000, so this game spent quite a while in development. It's a mix between adventure game and first-person shooter, and you take the role of Jack Walters, a private investigator. You're looking for a missing grocery shop clerk in Innsmouth. And if that sounds familiar, that's probably because this is once more a game based on the shadow over Innsmouth, at least partially. But as I've already said before, that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially because this is one of Lovecraft's best stories in my opinion, and probably one of the stories that's best or easiest to adapt for a video game. So yeah, I'm not blaming the developers here. So this game basically has three modes: adventure mode, stealth and FPS mode. They aren't official game modes, but you're basically doing some investigation stuff during the first half of the game. Then you do some stealth and escape stuff, and then when you finally get weapons, the game turns more or less into a first-person shooter, even though you still solve puzzles. So this game is quite popular, and there are reasons for that. However, I can't really recommend this game, and there are a number of reasons for that, and one of the most important reasons are the glitches and bugs. So this game is very, very buggy. It's not very polished. There are several sequences in the game where the game just freezes. There are a couple of rooms where you can't enter the room or look at certain things in the room, or the game will just freeze and you have to restart from a checkpoint. And on top of that, there are also a couple of game triggers that don't really work. And I'm not referring to stuff that doesn't work on Windows 7. So this game was originally designed for Xbox and Windows XP. And it does have some additional bugs on Windows 7, but I'm not talking about those. I'm only talking about the original bugs, and those are already game-breaking enough. You don't really need the new ones. So, and there are also a couple of things that just shouldn't be in the game. For example, you take a lot of damage from jumping, and I don't mean jumping down from objects. You just jump in the air. Your main character, Jack, he can jump ridiculously high, and then just take damage. That happens often enough. And there's also a number of limited saves, so you can only save so often, and you don't really have checkpoints, you have save points instead. So you can always go back to save points and just save, provided you can still reach them, but the problem with that is, if you save too often, then you don't get the game's best ending, and you just get the second ending, which is, to be honest, pretty lame. So you basically get punished for saving, and the game encourages you to just play the entire game almost in one go. There are a couple of autosaves every now and then, and you can rely on those, but this makes the game really, really frustrating, especially because this game has a lot of trial and error gameplay, so you're bound to die and then just try again. The problem with that is that you might easily lose 10 or 15 minutes of gameplay, especially if there's an unskippable cutscene. Yeah, this game has unskippable cutscenes, and at the beginning of a certain chapter, there's quite a difficult section where it's easy to die, and the loading time plus cutscene is more than 4 minutes long. So every time you die, you have to wait 4 minutes. So if you die there 2 or 3 times, you basically spend something like 20 minutes just sitting there through the same loading screen and cutscene over and over again. You do nothing. That's just ridiculous. I don't know why you can't skip these cutscenes. And of course, those cutscenes don't play over the loading time. No, you have to sit through the loading time and then through the cutscene. So this is a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. And what makes this worse is that Jack can't run. He can walk, he can crawl, which is slower, and he can go into sneak or stealth mode. Then he's sneakier, but even slower. So if you crawl in stealth mode, you almost don't move at all. So even if you just have to reach a certain room again after dying and going again from a checkpoint, then you might as well waste something like 5 minutes every time you die, doing nothing, not being challenged, just walking there in an agonizingly slow speed. And of course, this game also has jumping puzzles, and it's a first-person game, so that has almost never worked in any game, and it doesn't work in this game. So I've also have issues with the graphics. I'm not talking about the fact that the graphics are dated. They are dated now, obviously, because the game is almost 10 years old. They were also dated back then, but the problem is not that the graphics are dated. The problem is that the graphics use pretty much only 2 colors, brown and green. And yeah, the entire first half of the game is brown. Innsmouth is pretty much brown, all the buildings are brown, the refinery is brown, and the latter half of the game, a couple of the caves, they're all occasionally slightly greenish and grayish, but they're just so little colors. I guess it's supposed to look realistic because this game takes place in the 1920s, but it doesn't justify being so brown. As I've mentioned before, Call of Cthulhu Shadow of the Comet has demonstrated that you can have a colorful game that still works as a horror game. It doesn't have to be this brown. It doesn't work today, and it didn't work back then. Give your game some color. And another problem are a lot of recycled assets and a lot of cloned people. So there are very, very few models for the Innsmouth citizens and your later enemies. And you can see up to 3 or 4 guys who use exactly the same model on the screen at the same time. And I don't like that at all. Another issue is that if you shoot someone and the person dies, then the body disappears after something like 2 seconds. In fact, they just drop dead, fall over, and just evaporate. And that doesn't really help the immersion. And another problem is the stealth. So stealth's mainly used in the first half of the game when you don't have weapons. It works okay, but generally the AI is pretty poor. And occasionally you can just walk past people and you're right behind them, you're not even sneaking, they just don't notice you, and later on stealth will be completely useless. I mean, just look at the screen right now. I'm just wasting these guys. I don't need stealth. They aren't even hitting me, and I'm not even trying hard. I'm just walking through here, headshotting people. I'm not even aiming very well, and they just stand no chance against me. They outnumber me something like 5 or 6 to 1, and I'm just wasting them. I'm pretty much like your average first-person shooter protagonist. I'm not weak, I'm not in danger, and even if I get hit, I can just use health packs. And the health system in this game is interesting in the sense that you have different hit zones. You don't have a HUD, so you don't really see whether you're injured. You have to check that, or you have to pay attention to whether Jack walks slowly, then his leg was hit, or whether his aim is a little bit off, then his arms were hit. But it doesn't really matter because he can just hit one button and Jack heals himself. It takes some time, but it doesn't really matter because there's almost always cover, because enemies aren't really competent enough to find you when you're in cover. And there are enough health upgrades, so whenever you get hit, you can just kneel behind a box, push the healing button, and that's it. There's really no more point to it. You can get poisoned too, but it happens very, very rarely, and I almost was maxed out on antidote throughout the entire game, and I had really more than I needed. And that goes for a lot of health upgrades. So I had to leave a lot of health upgrade behind simply because I was already full and I didn't really need them, because the enemies, they aim so poorly, and even if they hit you, they usually don't kill you right away. You can sow quite a lot of damage. If you're right in front of the guy with a Tommy gun, then you might actually die, but generally the enemies are very poor shots. And so that makes the health system kind of meaningless, really. The enemies, as I've already mentioned before, their AI is really, really weak, even for a game that's almost 10 years old. You can occasionally just walk past guys that run right past you and ask, where is he? It's a little bit ridiculous, and it wouldn't be that much of a problem if this game was a straight first-person shooter that wants to be a straight first-person shooter, but this game pretends to be like a game where stealth is an option, and it really isn't, or at least it's completely pointless, so yeah. And of course, enemies don't drop ammo. You shoot an enemy and their weapon just evaporates miraculously. But again, that's not really a problem because most of the time you have enough ammo. And the only weapons I really used were the Springfield rifle, because it has very good aim and is sort of your sniper rifle for this game. And the 6-shooter, because 6-shooter is, well, it's not very accurate at longer range. It's excellent for headshots at closer range, and that's the easiest way to take out enemies. So, and also can fire 6 shots and doesn't have to be reloaded all that often. So with those weapons you're pretty much set. The Tommy gun and a couple of other weapons you find there are alright. So if you really run out of Springfield and 6-shooter ammo, you might as well use those. So, and the only times where I had trouble using my weapons was when the game takes away your weapons. But it never takes away your ammo, so as soon as you find your weapons again, you are again full on ammo and can go into a Rambo mode straight away. So yeah. And there's also an issue with the sanity system. So this game has a sanity system. If you see something that drops your sanity, like something horrifying or Lovecraftian monster, you take a sanity hit, then the screen gets blurry, and if you take too many sanity hits in too short an amount of time, then you will go completely insane and commit suicide. The problem with that is that most of the time you can just take a sanity hit, then just stand there and wait and you regenerate. That's everything. So there's no real cumulative sanity, at least not in the sense that you risk, let's say, taking too many hits halfway through this game, then dying later. And another problem with that is that you occasionally take hits when you see Lovecraftian monsters, which makes sense, but you also take a lot of hits when you just see normal corpses. So on one occasion you walk into a room where someone hung himself, then you take a sanity hit, but 10 minutes later you walk into a room full of Deep One hybrids and scary fish people, you headshot all of them, you basically blast their heads away, and you take no sanity hit. I mean, would probably be pretty horrifying to see a person that hung himself, but if you just can basically headshot half a dozen guys that aren't even real humans, that are basically abhuman abominations, and you just do that without taking any sanity hits, then I question why a corpse, an old dried out corpse, would scare you. So it's very inconsistent, and also means that this is a horror game where you kind of avoid all the horror. So yeah, that doesn't really work too well. The voice acting is alright for the main character. Overall, it's not too good, even though it's still kind of passable for a video game, but they also recycle a lot of clips, so yeah, it's not really all that good. There are also some issues with the plot, mainly that your main character, he's very inconsistent. He's mostly a smart and competent guy and friendly enough, but occasionally he's just really unfriendly and seems to act out of character. At one point, you break into a house and you find a girl who also broke in, and your character gets extremely snobbish and basically snorts at her, even though you are a burglar yourself and that woman is one of the few friendly people in town. So why am I so unfriendly? I don't get it. So it's very inconsistent. And another problem is that, as I've already mentioned, you can basically just shoot all the Lovecraftian horrors. There's almost nothing you really have to be afraid of, and the theme of humanity being insignificant and ultimately being unable to fight against Lovecraftian horrors isn't really there. You just take out your weapons, you blast away Deep Ones like it's nothing, and at one point you even meet a really strong Lovecraftian creature. I won't spoil it in case you still want to play this game, but you basically just shoot it. You get out your gun, it's a big gun admittedly, but you just blast it away. So yeah, overall I didn't really enjoy this game. So I mean, it would have been fine if I would still enjoy it, but I really didn't, so honestly I can't recommend it. But I know that a lot of people like this game, so if you're a fan you still might want to check it out, but I didn't really have fun with this game. Sorry about that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I shall see you next time. Take care and goodbye.